study, it got a jurisprudential status in the social contract theory, Hobbes, Locke, Rousseau. These were three exponents of the social contract theory. And Hobbes said, man by nature is nasty and brutish. They are like a herd of wolves. If there is no state or master above them. And he said that the development of the state was with regard to the protection of rights. The individuals, they surrender some of the rights to the sovereign, and the sovereign guarantees that we will protect you. So this was a type of social contract between the state and the individual. Then Locke, he agreed with the social contract, and he said that the man was not civilized, but because it was essential to have a state above them. Then Rousseau, he said man is born free, but everywhere he is in chains. That freedom, the freedom rights, they come to a man by birth. But he has to surrender his rights because man, as a part of society, he has to live in harmony with others. So there, man has to surrender some of his rights. So there you come across that this concept of right, that is the civil and especially the which some of the writers they refer to as first generation rights. Now that is they don't refer to generation rights, but earlier this was called as the first generation rights, the civil and political rights. So there, that is Rousseau's views. They were taken to USA by the people who struggled for freedom of USA from British control. And there, in the Constitution of the United States, for the first time, you come across the reflection of the social contract. The Constitution of USA begins with the words, we the people of the United States, the people and the sovereign, they have a social contract. So ultimately the people are sovereign. Sovereignty lies with the people. The American Revolution, it was followed by the French Revolution. And French Revolution also, that is the liberty and the equality, liberty and fraternity. There you come across, that is justice, liberty, life, liberty and property in USA, and pursuit of happiness. So these were the goals of the American Constitution and were accepted in the French Constitution. So when the 100 years was completed, the Statue of Liberty was given by France to USA as a signal, as a particular symbol of the freedom, of liberty, of the rights. So there, that is, you come across another movement started. This was with regard to the civil and political rights, the struggle, that is subjudication, the slavery, all this that is brought in a type of thought for liberty and freedom. Then another movement started. You come across that Hegel. Then you come across Karl Marx. So Hegel, in jurisprudential thought, Hegel, thesis, antithesis, synthesis, that is man, human civilization is an evolution. Society evolves. And Karl Marx took that theory. He also agreed that society has evolved. But he said it is the struggle between the capitalist, the bourgeois, and the working class. So he said state is the means of exploitation of the workers, of the peasants, of those who earn the living. And he said that this civil and political liberty, they don't mean anything if the stomach is empty. When you don't have food to eat, that is what is the meaning of this liberty? What is the meaning of voting rights? Because people will sell themselves for that is a plate of food, because their poverty, he said, Karl Marx said, poverty is the main thing which, and also recently, that is about 1 week back, you come across the present Chief Justice of India, Justice Ramana, that is with regard to a public interest litigation before the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court asked that is Advocate General, that is what you are doing with regard to food security, food, because food security bill is there, but still people are starving. So there, Karl Marx, he that is said that civil and political liberty have no meaning if you don't have food, if you don't have shelter, if you don't have clothing. So there, this was the development of the second generation rights according to some authors. So earlier authors you come across, first generation rights, they said it was civil and political rights. Second generation rights, they said it was the economic, social and cultural rights. So that is Karl Marx theory. It was accepted by the revolution in Russia, August Revolution in 1917, wherein communism, it was accepted in, that is Russia. So you come across there, stress is upon the right to work, right to employment, right to food, right to security, but not upon civil and political liberties. And that principle is followed in China, where you have all other rights excepting civil and political rights. So here this development took place, and you come across that the First World War, Second World War. First World War, Second World War took place, and the Second World War. Second World War, that is which virtually began in 1919. It was, that is First World War came to an end, rights. That time it was not called as human rights, violation of rights of the people, violation of basic right to life. People were taken into concentration chambers and thousands of people were given gas and they were killed. So here this was a gross way of violation of human rights, especially genocide, killing of a race. So that was, you come across that this violation of human rights, it hurt or it disturbed the minds of thinkers across the world. And you come across, that is on 6th, 9th August 1945, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, that was a counter-terrorist attack, counter violation of human rights, wherein, that is, 2 bombs were dropped, wherein for generations people are suffering from, that is, genetic disorders, a worst form of human rights violations. So all these disturbed the minds of the thinkers of those days. And when the United Nations was formed on 24th October 1945, there you come across in the United Nations Charter, for the first time, the word human rights appears. Before 1945, the word human rights was never used. In the UN Charter, that is, you come across that protection of human rights, it is one of the goals of the United Nations. So 24th October 1945, when the charter was adopted, UN Charter in San Francisco, there, that is, besides prevention of war, one of the purposes of the United Nations was to protect human rights. Another was to bring about cooperation among the states. There should be cooperation among the states, because 2 things are there: negative war, positive war. Positive war is fighting, open fighting, Negative war is Cold War. When you don't fight, but enmity is there. When you don't attack, but you don't have friendly relations. Because India, whether it is with China or with Pakistan, we don't have, there is no war, but we don't have good relations. So this is what United Nations said. There must be, that is, friendly relations among states, and the United Nations will bring about cooperation. So high ideals were there in the United Nations Charter. And immediately after the General Assembly met, they decided upon two things. One was a convention for genocide, killing of a race, killing of, that is, a group of people belonging to a particular race, religion. This is genocide. So here, genocide convention was adopted in 1948, and the General Assembly, it resolved to establish a committee to prepare a draft treaty for the protection of human rights, because human rights for the first time came in the charter. So now United Nations General Assembly, it felt that there must be a convention, a treaty binding on the states to protect human rights. But you find that a major development took place, the unity of the five big powers, the five big powers who form the Security Council, permanent members of the Security Council, USA, USSR, that time USSR, UK, France, and China. They united together. They were the allied powers. But once Russia, that is, Germany was defeated and Hitler committed suicide, immediately when victory came, that is the first, that is the groupism, the first conflict came with regard to, that is, how to, that is, manage Germany. Germany was taken over, the eastern part by Russia, the western part by USA, UK, and France. So USA, UK, France, they decided to develop the democratic pattern in West Germany. And Russia said, no, we will not allow Germany to be a democratic country again. It was put, that is, made into a satellite country, and that is controlled by Russia. So such was the misunderstanding between the two groups, that ultimately the Berlin Wall was constructed. Berlin was divided by a wall, East Germany, West Germany, and the, that is, Cold War came to an end when Mikhail Gorbachev was there and the Berlin Wall was broken. So Berlin Wall was the symbol of the division of the big powers, that is, capitalist country and the communist countries. And after Mikhail Gorbachev, Germany was united and the Cold War came to an end. So here, that is, the, because of the distrust, till 1945, all the five powers, they were united. But once that freedom came, once Germany was annihilated, there the Russia wanted to implement, said, economic social rights. USA said civil and political rights. So like that, that is the committee that was formed. It was given the mandate, although it was decided to make it a treaty, binding treaty. But Russia said, unless, if civil and political rights are there, we will not accept. And USA said, without civil and political rights, we will not accept any treaty. So ultimately, it was decided to have a declaration which was not binding. So now the committee was headed by the chairperson, Eleanor Roosevelt. Eleanor Roosevelt was the chairperson of the drafting committee of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And she prepared the draft of both civil and political rights, economic, social, and cultural rights. And she said that human rights means two things. Human rights means two things. One is freedom from fear. Second is freedom from want. That is freedom from fear. It recognizes the civil and political rights. That is, you can exercise your freedom, speech, expression, movement without interference by the state. That is civil and political rights, freedom from fear. You can exercise your rights without any hindrance. State must give protection. And freedom from want means food, shelter, and clothing. That is freedom from hunger, freedom from poverty. So she said freedom from fear, freedom from want. And that is, you come across that is similar words. That is the entire concept of human rights. You come across in the poems, in the poem of the great Nobel laureate Rabindranath Tagore, in his Gitanjali, that is in a poem, he has spelled out the rights which are flowing from the Constitution, where the mind is without fear and the head is held high, where knowledge is free and the world has not been broken up into fragments by narrow domestic walls, where words come out from the depth of truth, where tireless striving reaches out towards perfection. So like this, you come across that is where the mind is without fear. These lines that is were accepted by Eleanor Roosevelt. That is freedom from fear. And you come across the other words. Head is held high. That is right to dignity. Right to dignity. Now that is the Supreme Court has that is interpreted right to life means right to live with dignity. And also that is from these words, that is knowledge is free, right to education. So in that poem you come across that is, it has influenced the thought of the particular liberty, the concept of liberty, concept of different rights. So here Eleanor Roosevelt prepared the draft of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which contained some parts with regard to the civil and political rights and some part with regard to the economic, social, and cultural rights. And later on, in 1966, two covenants were made: International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Two covenants. And option was given to the states. Either you could accept this or you could accept this. You could be a member of this treaty or this treaty. Option was given. So here you come across that the particular, that is the concept of rights which came, that is in the Universal Declaration of Rights, it found support, it had an impact upon two covenants because of the Cold War. Now, during the particular, that is drafting of the convention of the particular Universal Declaration of Human Rights, at that time the Constituent Assembly of India, they were drafting the Constitution of India. That is the first Constituent Assembly, the first meeting of the Constituent Assembly was, that is on 9th December 1946. Yesterday was the first meeting of the Constituent Assembly in 1946. And the particular, that is Constituent Assembly, it worked for 2 years, 11 months and 17 days. The Constituent Assembly sat for 2 years, 11 months, 17 days. and submitted the draft on 26 November 1949. So you find that in the Constituent Assembly, there were luminaries which you will never find again in the parliament. There were Dr. Rajendra Prasad, Dr. Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan, C. Rajgopalachari, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, all the stalwarts were there. And how that is people elected them to the Constituent Assembly. The consciousness among the people who elected them. And now you come across the parliament, the assembly, that is every day stalling, no debates, no discussions. So there, how for 2 years, 11 months and 17 days, the Constituent Assembly sat debating, discussing, correcting. And Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, he that is brought them together and drafted the provisions of the Constitution. So what a great effort it was. That is number of from different constitutions. You find that is the debate was there. Also, similarly, you come across another masterpiece of legislative drafting is the Indian Penal Code. That is like the Constitution of India, it took number of years. So also with regard to the Indian Penal Code, if you look into the drafting, that is Lord Macaulay, he was the chairman of the First Law Commission. And 1833, the First Law Commission was appointed. 1837, the Indian Penal Code was drafted and submitted. And from 37 till 1860, 1837, it was submitted, it went for debate, discussion, it was circulated, and 1860 it was adopted. And Indian Penal Code is a model, a symbol of that is their penal laws. It has been accepted in many countries across the world. So you come across that is what efforts were there in drafting of the bills. So like this you come across, coming back to the Constituent Assembly, that is in the Constituent Assembly debates, the objective resolution was moved by Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru. And that objective resolution became the preamble of the Indian Constitution. And the four pillars of the Constitution are justice, equality, liberty, and fraternity. 4 pillars. Each pillar very difficult to define. What is justice? What is justice? Right from Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, they have tried to define. Justice is a virtue. Justice is a virtue. And everyone must be given his due. But what is due to a person? You come across a lot of debates. What is the concept of justice? And you come across a debate between John Rawls. He said that justice, you can identify justice under a veil of ignorance. If a person does not know, the veil of ignorance means you don't know anything about yourself. If you don't know whether you are male or female, you are rich or poor, you belong to this caste or that caste. Under those circumstances, what will you choose as the basic concept of justice? And he said that under those circumstances, people will choose liberty, equality, and equality of opportunities. But then Amartya Sen, he criticized John Rawls. He said, no question of definition of justice. John Rawls said that you cannot define justice, but you can, that is, remove justice wherever you see it. You cannot see justice, but everywhere you can see injustice. Because injustice you can easily see. Supposing I have 4 sweets and 3 students are there, and if I give 2 students 1 that is sweets each, and the 3rd student I give 2 sweets, then immediately people will say it is injustice. That is Amartya Sen, he said immediately people will say that it is injustice. And how that is, people will understand that justice has been done. So then I have to explain that this boy is thin, therefore I gave him one sweet. This boy is suffering from dysentery, I gave him one sweet. This third person is fat and can eat more, therefore I gave him two sweets. Now everyone will start clapping and say, yes, this is justice. So Amartya Sen said that you cannot see injustice, you cannot see justice, but everywhere you can see injustice. So that is especially in Amartya Sen's, that is idea of justice. In the introduction, he has given the story of the flute. He has begun the introduction with the story of the flute. That is three boys. They go, and that is one of them collects the bamboo and makes the flute. The other boy can play the flute. Third boy is poor. Then Amartya Sen says, all three boys, they start claiming for the flute. So to whom will you give the flute? This is his question. He said, everyone has a good reason. First one is saying, I have created the flute. I am the maker of the flute. The flute must come to me. The second boy is saying, I have merit. I have merit. I can play the flute, therefore flute should come to me. And third boy is saying, I am poor, I am deprived, I don't have anything to that is play with, so I must get the flute. The other people can buy the flute. So like this, Amartya Sen raises the question. He says, don't discuss about justice, don't define justice, but wherever injustice is there, you try to remove the injustice. If someone is hungry, don't think about what is justice, right to food, all these are important, unimportant. Give him food. You take from the shop one plate of food, give it to him, that is justice. So Amartya Sen says, wherever injustice is there, try to remove it. Instead of that is all this, that is if that is a person is unable to go to the hospital because no ambulance is there, providing an ambulance to that person is justice. Instead of talking about health security and all this, it is immaterial. Immediately, if you arrange a vehicle to take the person to the hospital, that is justice. So the four concepts are there: justice, equality, liberty, and fraternity. And fraternity, India is very low. The constitutional ideal is fraternity, that is fraternity. And 1 month back, the World Brotherhood Index, it was published. Brotherhood is fellow feeling, the feeling between people. So there you come across Japan is at the top. Japan is at the top. When one person sees another suffering, he will immediately help. So Japan is top in the, that is brotherhood list. But India is very low, among the lowest. In India, that is, according to the list, one person will not help another. When you see someone who has met an accident lying on the road, you will not go to help him. You will not go to take him to the hospital. Immediately, people from distance, they will take, that is the mobile video and post it on Facebook and other social media, but they will not lend a helping hand to the particular person who is lying on the road. They will not help a person who is not having food. So that is what, that is the brotherhood index. That is what fraternity means. And India is very low. So now that is the Constituent Assembly, that is they prepared the, that is besides the preamble, they prepared a Bill of Rights, the fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy. So all the provisions that are there in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, they were put under two categories. One was the fundamental rights, part 3 of the Constitution, and another was the directive principles of state policy, part 4 of the Constitution. Because the Constitution makers, they felt that we don't have money. India is a new country and resources are limited. So we cannot, that is carry out all the goals, all the rights cannot be fulfilled. So with regard to education, they said that if education is put under fundamental rights, state does not have resources. So they put it under directive principles. But later on, after Mohini Jain case, Unni Krishnan case, right to education became a fundamental right and included under 21A. So like this, that is the Constitution of India, that is when it was framed, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights became a model. And the constitution makers, they included the rights that are guaranteed under the Universal Declaration of Rights of Human Rights in the Constitution of India, but they put it under two parts. The fundamental rights which can be, that is, which are justiciable, you can go to the court. The Supreme Court is the guardian of the Constitution and of the fundamental rights. You can directly go to the Supreme Court. And the directive principles of state policy are not justiciable. But Supreme Court, while interpreting the fundamental rights, they have included many of the provisions into the fundamental rights. So here you come across that the particular fundamental rights which are there in the Constitution of India, they came to be, that is, discussed by the Supreme Court in the first case that came up before the Supreme Court of India after the Constitution came into force in 1950. The first case before the Supreme Court was A.K. Gopalan versus State of Madras. And there, Supreme Court took a very narrow view. Justice Kanya was there. All the, that is, the judges who had seen partition, who had seen the horrors of partition, they knew the situation in the country. It was volatile. There were agitations everywhere. So that is, here you come across that the Supreme Court in A.K. Gopalan versus State of Madras, they wanted to support the government. They felt that unless the government is supported, the country will not survive, because a lot of problems were there. On the one side, there was a lot of, that is, people who came to India after partition. They have to be, that is, kept. They have to be provided food, shelter, clothing. On the other side, that is, people were there creating havoc, fighting against the government. So like this, that is, the A.K. Gopalan versus State of Madras, the Supreme Court, it was asked to, that is, decide with regard to Preventive Detention Act 1950. And A.K. Gopalan, he was a communist leader. That time, Communist Party was banned, because that is, of certain reasons it was banned. So A.K. Gopalan was, that is, put under preventive detention. And preventive detention is in the fundamental rights. The preventive detention portion is, you find, in the fundamental rights. In part 3 of the Constitution, where liberty is mentioned, there you come across the preventive detention laws also find support. And also, that is, in Article 22, where this preventive detention provision is there, you will come across, that is, in the entire Constitution of India, only one profession has been mentioned. Only one profession you find in the Constitution of India, in one place. If you go through the entire Constitution, that is under Article 22(1), always remember Article 22(1), you find the Constitution speaks about the legal profession. In the entire Constitution, you will not find doctors, you will not find engineers, but you will find lawyers. In Article 22(1), only one profession has been mentioned, and there, that is, right to be represented by a lawyer of the choice. So the entire Constitution, it has faith in one profession, that is the legal profession, because always the legal profession, that is, it is that is always helpful, because that is at two places, if you can find a friend, Rajadware and Smasane, that is two places friends are there. So Rajadware means court. When you are before the king or before the court, there that is lawyer will help. So here in the Constitution of India, only at one place you come across the profession, and that is the legal profession. So A.K. Gopalan versus State of Madras, it was a case where the Supreme Court, it said Article 14, 19, 21, 22. Each of them is separate. No connection is there. So that is when 19 is when freedom of speech is curtailed, you cannot ask equality. Why he is getting freedom of speech, I am not getting. And when right to life is there, you cannot ask freedom of speech. So like this, Supreme Court in A.K. Gopalan took a very narrow view, but you will come across the opposite decision in Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India. So 2 points, A.K. Gopalan versus State of Madras, Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India. One was 1950, one was 1978. Two different stands of the Supreme Court of India. One was immediately after partition, the horrors of partition. Another was after the horrors of the emergency. So two things, but already that is, I think I have taken a lot of time.
No,
Huh?
no, not up. You can speak, and you can speak according to your convenience.
Another 10, 15 minutes, 10 minutes I'll take it.
Yes, yes, definitely.
So here you come across A.K. Gopalan versus State of Madras from 1950 till 1960. The Supreme Court, the judges of the Supreme Court, they were concerned about the Indian economy, about the Indian government, and they wanted to support the government. So most of the decisions, especially they supported the economic policies of the government, whether it was with regard to land reforms and other things. But 1960, you come across a judge who was appointed to the Supreme Court, Justice Koka Subbarao. He was appointed in 1960, and there Kochuni case of 1960, Justice Koka Subbarao, he said he tried to bring about a relationship between 14, 19, 21. But in another case, Makhan Singh versus that is state of UP, he came to a minority. And after that, you come across the two emergencies, 1962, 65, where the freedoms were curtailed. And at that time, the Chief Justice of India was Justice Gajendra Gadkar, 1965. And Justice Gajendra Gadkar, that is one case came up before him. Prabhakar Pandurang Sansgiri versus State of Maharashtra. So a person who was inside jail, he wrote a book on the atom. He was inside jail, but he was a scientist. He wrote a book on the atom. He wanted to get it published. But there, the jail authority said, no, it cannot be published. Because once you are inside jail, you lose your freedom of speech and expression. You are put in the jail under Article 21. Under 19, you cannot claim your freedom of speech and expression. This matter came up before the Supreme Court of India. And Supreme Court Justice Gajendra Gadkar bench, they said that the particular, that is a person inside jail, does not lose his freedoms. That was Gajendra Gadkar. This was followed by a particular trend where that is the judges started that is giving judgments against the government. The climax came in Golaknath. In Golaknath case, Supreme Court said the Parliament cannot touch fundamental rights. You cannot touch the fundamental rights. But Immediately after that, you come across some cases were there, and ultimately 1973, Kesavananda Bharati versus State of Kerala. That was a major case, and by 13 judges. This was the biggest bench. 13 judges sat together and they were to decide, that is the particular, that is whether the fundamental rights can be amended or not. And there, that is the illuminating arguments by the eminent lawyer Nani Palkiwala. Nani Palkiwala, his arguments, and he got an idea with regard to this basic structure. And this concept of basic structure, mostly that is, it has come from Nani Palkiwala, even though in the judgment it has been accepted. And in that case, that is 7 versus 6, 7 judges for and 6 judges against. So by only one judge, that is the particular, that is the Supreme Court held that you can amend any part of the constitution excepting basic feature of the Constitution of India. So there, because of Kesavananda Bharati case, the Supreme Court continues to exercise power of jurisdiction over the particular, that is the constitutional matters. And during that period, you come across number of cases, Sambhunath Sarkar, number of cases, especially in Bengal, all the communist leaders, trade union leaders, they were put inside jail. And there, Supreme Court, it used to interfere. And by this time, Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer was on the bench. So 2 of the judges who gave movement, one was Justice Koka Subbarao, who began the movement, and another was Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer. But immediately after this, 1975, Srimati Indira Gandhi versus Raj Nara in that case, and Mrs. Gandhi's election was declared as void. And their matter came before the Supreme Court. Emergency was declared. 1975, May 1975 to 77. And during this period, 2 major cases with regard to human rights came before the Supreme Court. One was ADM Jabalpur versus Shukla 1976. Another was Bhanu Das versus Union of India 1977. And there, that is the judges, they said we have faith in the judiciary, in the executive, and we will not interfere. Because many of the petitions were there with regard to someone wanted to appear, examination, someone wanted to attend the funeral, someone wanted medical treatment, but Supreme Court said we will not interfere. But one judge name you have to always remember, Justice H.R. Khanna. Justice H.R. Khanna, he gave the judgment. He said human rights are not given by the state. Go read the Constitution. He said human rights are not given by the state. A person is born with human rights. A person is born with human rights. Only the state guarantees that under these circumstances we will curtail. So he said Constitution does not give you rights. The Constitution only guarantees that you can exercise your rights up to this limit. So here, Justice Khanna, he was superseded after the judgment. He resigned from the Supreme Court. And today, if anyone goes to the Supreme Court of India in hall number 2, you will find the portrait of Justice Khanna, where he gave the famous judgment, dissenting opinion in ADM Jabalpur versus Shukla. So 1977, the particular, that is emergency, came to an end. 1978, the Supreme Court again was faced with the case Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India. She wanted to go abroad, but the passport authority said that we will not give you the passport because the Home Ministry has said not to give. So there, the matter came before the Supreme Court, And some of the judges in the Supreme Court, they were also there in ADM Jabalpur versus Shukla. So that stigma which was there, they had supported the government, but after the emergency was over, number of atrocities came to the fore. And there, the Supreme Court, it held that Article 14, 19, 21, 22, all are linked together. If you read one, you have to link it to others. So a particular procedure must be fair. It must be just. It must be, that is, it must have all the, that is, it must have reasonableness. So 14, 19, 21, they brought together. And from there you come across that the widening of the rights, it began after Maneka, and two criminals who were in Tihar jail, Charles Shobraj, Sunil Batra, they used to look around what is happening inside the jail. Someone is put under solitary confinement. Someone is, that is, beaten, handcuffs are put, and they wrote letters to the Chief Justice of Supreme Court of India. And the Supreme Court at that time, Justice Bhagavati, Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer, and they said that India is a poor country, and coming to the court, coming to the Supreme Court is very difficult. You come across Ram Jethmalani used to charge 22 lakhs for one hearing, 22 lakhs. Harish Salve, 23, 25 lakhs. So how a common man, poor man can reach the Supreme Court? So Supreme Court said that even a letter should be treated as a writ petition. So like this, you come across that the Supreme Court has played an important role in the protection of rights and the particular, that is, expanding the rights as per the developments at the international world. Number of cases. So with these words, that is, I thank you all for giving me the opportunity to speak about the protection of rights.
Sulekha.
Sir, I have one question. Can I ask you?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, last few years, 40% of human rights violation case lodged annually by the National Human Rights Commission. In past 3 financial years, still till this October 31st, were from UP only. Sir, as a law student, how can we reduce human rights violation, or how can we promote human rights in our community?
Actually, this is a very difficult question, because mostly that is very often you come across human rights violations. When they are perpetrated with the support of the, that is, nowadays 2 powers are there. 2 powers, money power, muscle power. So that is, many people, they have tried to fight against the human rights, those who violate human rights, but they have been eliminated by muscle power, money power. So you have to tread carefully. Whistleblowers, in, that is, in many places you come across those who give complaint, the witnesses, they are being eliminated. So this is a very, that is not a good situation, not a good sign. Because especially, that is, as citizens, it is the duty to choose good people as members of the assembly and the parliament. Because Vora committee, it spoke about criminalization of politics. Because that is, most of the crimes you link with political parties and the persons who are in political power. So nowadays, muscle power and money power, they are ruling much of the particular, that is, criminal activities. So when you take up the cause, you can speak in the press. You can, that is, file cases before the court. Even paper cuttings, you can send to the Supreme Court. but you have to also protect yourself because it is a very difficult path. Chalna sambal ke. So it's very difficult, and that is if you have strength. If you have strength, if you have that is power, then you can fight.
One more question, sir.
Yes.
एक्चुअली अभी एक ट्रेंड चल रहा है जो हम बोलते हैं फोर्थ पिलर हमारे जो मीडिया है, ठीक है, कोई भी ह्यूमन राइट वायलेशन होता है, कोर्ट में कोई केस है, तो उसके जजमेंट आने से पहले ही हमारे फोर्थ पिलर मीडिया जो कि वो डिक्लेयर कर देते हैं ये क्राइम, ये क्रिमिनल है, ये दोषी है, ये दोषी नहीं है, इसको इतने साल की सजा होना चाहिए, इसको नहीं होना चाहिए। तो कोर्ट की डिसीजन आने से पहले ही उसको ये पब्लिक के दिमाग में ये पूरा फील कर देते हैं जे ये क्राइम हुआ है, ठीक है। तो एक तरफ कोर्ट में केस है, जब दिमाग में फेक न्यूज फैला देते हैं, जब कोर्ट की रियल डिसीजन आता है जो ये दोषी नहीं है, ये दोषी है और इसको इतना ही साल की सजा मिलना चाहिए, लेकिन जो रियल फैक्ट है लोगों तक पहुंचता नहीं है, जो फेक है लोगों तक पहुंच जाता है। तो इस चीज को कैसे हम टेकल करें?
Now this media trial, you come across trial by media. This is a very, that is because now social media is so powerful that every matter that is before it goes to the court, it will be viral on the website, on the social media, on WhatsApp, and that is people now that is they will be claiming so and so is guilty, so and so is not guilty. So this is a particular trend, and it is for the court to regulate because certain laws are there, contempt of court. When a particular matter is pending before the court and anyone makes a statement which has an impact upon the judgment, then the court can direct that that is contempt of court. And also that is certain, that is the particular, that is press and media, they have certain guidelines. That is how to report, when to report a particular matter. So here it depends upon the particular judge to that is decide on the matter and to that is decide whether that is the particular press should be allowed to publish or not, and what action will be taken against the press. But very often that is you come across that the judges are influenced by the media because judges also see the news. Judges also see the news. Judges also read the newspaper. So anything that is published, it has an impact upon the judge. So very often you come across that people, that is because of the pressure of the media, that is they have been convicted. Arushi murder case, Nirbhaya case. So many cases are there in different parts. But why Nirbhaya became an important case and led to the amendment of Juvenile Justice Act? This was because the press they published so much. So like that is press can make a matter sensational. That is the fourth pillar. Press is considered to be the fourth pillar. They can make a case sensational. And because so many cases are going on, but why that Nirbhaya case, it was taken up in a quick manner. And you come across nowadays number of POCSO cases. In one day, a trial is completed. So like this is a trend which is developing, and generally that is judges also get influenced by the particular, that is media. Although it is a bad trend, but that is in the present day, that is you cannot avoid this media trial.
Anything more?
Thank you, sir.
Sulekha.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, sir. And I request Professor Dr. Binayak Patnaik, sir, to address the audience and extend the vote of thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Sulekha Reddy. A very good afternoon to all of you. After listening to Professor Dr. Lalit Kumar Dev, the chief guest and speaker of this occasion, I have come to the conclusion that Professor Dev has a kind of love, affection, and involvement for the institute. He has not left any stone unturned in so far as human right is concerned. He touched every facet, every aspect of human right. He has spoken about the historical perspective of human right, which started from Magna Carta,
Bineko, you are muted. You are muted.
he has, I think I have told something that you listen.
It
From the
was
beginning?
Yes, beginning it was there. In the middle it was
Okay.
muted.
So that is why I want to say that since every aspect of human right is already covered by our sir, we don't need to listen any other lecture on human right. Magna Carta, Bill of Rights, fundamental right. Now, why this particular human right concept came into existence, that also he explained. He said that in piecemeal, every country was fighting for liberty, for freedom. Therefore, ultimately, the General Assembly of the United Nations adopted the Universal Declaration, along with the two covenants, civil and political rights, economic, social, and cultural rights. And thus, the human right came into existence. He also told that unless an idea like human right, a concept like human right, is not in existence, then what will happen? The consequence will be might is right. We will have no freedom. Freedom to speak, freedom to move. We will be under torture and subjugation. And in order to make free, we witnessed revolutions, French Revolution, American War of Independence, Indian War of Independence. So ultimately, the human right came into existence to protect the rights of all human beings, irrespective of caste, creed, and color, sex, and economic background. Human right is a big canvas. It includes all rights, he also told. It's a natural right. What a human being wants, those rights are included under human right. So it's a big scope. Right to live, right to livelihood, right to freedom, right to equality. Basic freedoms every human being should be given because he is a human being. And as Professor Dev has said, Roosevelt, who is the wife of the President Roosevelt, he said, from where the human rights should begin? Human rights should begin. Human rights should be given to the poor, to the rural, to the tribal, to the vulnerable and helpless groups, to the refugees, to the migrant workers, displaced persons, indigenous persons, persons who are disabled, minorities. They do not know what is human right. So Eleanor has said, from where we have to begin human right? Human right will begin from them. How? Therefore, a particular principle or rule has been codified that learning about human right is now indispensable. And it itself is a human right. Every human being must know about his right or her right. Otherwise, he will be ignorant. And this ignorance is nothing but a violation of the human right. Therefore, the crux of the problem today is human right education to all. Then only we can protect the human rights of all. So it should be included in the curriculum of every textbook, not only in school, not only in higher level, but in schools and colleges. That is also one of the points which is highlighted from different platforms, education and human right, because it gives you the knowledge that who violates your right, because it is a welfare state. It is the responsibility of the state to protect your right. The fundamental right which is given in part 3 of the Constitution, and the rights which are to be protected by the state, directions are given in part 4 of the Constitution. So the state has to protect your rights. So if in case of violation, Sir has said, we have developed the public interest litigation postcard. Therefore, every human being whose right is violated, either he or she, or on his behalf or her behalf, anybody can approach the Supreme Court of India for a redressal of his right. Therefore, there is absolutely no problem at all. Therefore, the message today is the only right each human being has is to respect the right of others. If you respect the right of others, then human rights will definitely be fulfilled. We can translate what we are reading in theory into practice, into reality. To respect the right of all others. Sir has very clearly said, which is also incorporated in Article 1 of the Universal Declaration, because there are 30 articles in Universal Declaration. And first article says the freedom and equality. All are born free and all are born equal in right and in dignity. Therefore, it is now time that everyone must be given the opportunity to fulfill his fundamental right, the basic right, the natural right, right to live, right to livelihood, right to freedom, freedom from want, freedom from fear, dignity, which is the quintessence of human right. Everyone should have dignity, even if, as Sunil Batra case Sir has cited, even a prisoner has also dignity in the jail. He cannot be tortured. So all these things we are now talking because of what? Because of one particular declaration, Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Had that not come into existence, today we might not have been speaking so freely about human rights. We would not have got this freedom to speak. That is why we must be very thankful to those pioneers who brought into existence the declaration and also said that every constitution of India must include these human rights in their respective constitutions. And accordingly, as Sir has said, in 49, while adopting the constitution, we included the human rights under chapter 3 and chapter 4 of the Constitution of India. And it becomes now mandatory on the part of the government to fulfill the rights of all human beings. And that is the charisma of this declaration. And that is why we are celebrating this. And we are celebrating this because we will take a vow and promise that we will carry this message to the nook and corner of the country, to those people who are not aware of what is human right, and also see that this human right is translated into reality. So we are very, very thankful to Professor Dev, who has very clearly spoken about the human right. After listening to him, now I'm thinking there is no need of listening to any other lecture on human rights. Everything he has covered. We are very, very thankful to you, sir. You have got a sense of the involvement and love for the institute. You were already with this institute, and presently also you are there. So we will not miss you again, and we will invite you. We are very thankful to Itisri, who was also a colleague, who was my colleague in Ganjam Law College, and the other person also from Birla Global University. Thankful to them. We are thankful all the members of the faculty and staff who are present here and learned about the human right, which is a very important thing. Unless you know, you cannot carry forward this to everyone. Therefore, with these words, I am thankful to all of you. Thank you very much, Professor Dev. Thanks to all of you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Sulekha, for nice anchoring and taking so much of care in distributing the links to the chief guest, to me, and to all the students, and making this a grand success. Happy Human Rights Day to all of you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Lalit sir and Binayak sir,
Thank you
for
very
making
much.
an excellent
Thank you.
presentation.
Thank you,
and
sir.
making this seminar a very meaningful and interesting.
Thank
Sir,
you very much.
Rakhidewa,
Huh.
ଆପଣଙ୍କର ହେଇଗଲା ଗୋଟେ ହେଇଗଲା ଆଉ ଅଧଘଣ୍ଟା ରହିଲା। ହଉ
Close
ରହିଲି,
for
thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
ନମସ୍କାର।
Thank
Itisri.
you, sir. Thank you, sir, for sharing your experiences and knowledges about the human rights.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Sulekha,
Should I conclude?
please declare the program.
Thank you so much, sir.
Good.
I extend my thankfulness to all of you for your kind participation. I'm especially thankful to Professor Dr. Lalit Kumar Dev, sir, for his kind presence, and it was an absolute pleasure on learning his views towards protection of human rights. Now, the program has come to an end. Thank you, all of you.